Hello everybody and welcome back to Fewladelphia, and today we're going to be having a little look at our production chains, adding in a stone quarry with a whole bunch of detail. That hopefully shouldn't surprise any of you after our junkyard industry area that we put in last time. And also working on a bit more expansion, hopefully adding in a high school. I think we've got the budget for it now. So yeah, we're making a decent amount of money. We're making almost 9,000 an hour. Our population is steadily going up, but we definitely want to expand a little bit more. We've got demand for all three types of residential areas. We've still got a lot of commercial that needs filling out, but they are starting to come in. So like most of this row previously was unoccupied, and now it's actually only one of these buildings here. We still have quite a few of the low density options around here unoccupied, so no more commercial until we get this all filled up and filled in. I am seeing the occasional pop-up of crime problems. Now, it's just the odd crime scene here or there, so I'm not too worried about it at the moment, but we might want to have a little look at our service budget and increasing that for police and administration. At the moment, that is still on 50%. And we're making a ton of money, so we could afford to go up a little bit, I think, on that. But we'll wait and see. You see that one's just popped away already, so the police have already been in attendance to that crime scene, so I think we're okay there. So yeah, let's start by having a look at our production chains, and the two big deficits that we do have at the moment are vegetables and also stone. Now stone we can put anywhere, we don't need raw resource for it. Vegetables we do need to have fertile ground for. So if we take a little look at our heat map here, most of our fertile ground is around the sort of river edges and over in this valley over here, also where we're going to be putting our downtown, so that'll probably get wasted. I do have the mod to place it in wherever we want, so we could start putting in some vegetable fields, perhaps on the outskirts over here. But I'd quite like to build up to it, make sure we've got enough room for our rail yard that's going to be going in here as well. So I think we're going to park vegetables just for the moment and focus on getting this stone deficit right down, particularly because a lot of that is used for construction of buildings, so we don't want them to fall down over time, especially if they become abandoned. So the area I'm kind of eyeing up for this is over here. We've got this nice kind of natural divide in between these two hillsides here. So I think this would be a pretty realistic place for a stone mine, perhaps, where they're going to cut into this hillside out here to extract the stone. And also hopefully it's right next to our other industry area here, so I think that's going to work. The pollution is also being carried this way, so from that perspective it's not going to be kind of trailing over our town. So let's go ahead and grab our stone mine, and I think we're going to place the entrance reasonably close out actually to this road over here. And I want to do a lot of detailing around this. I don't want this to stay untouched because they can look pretty raw and pretty bare. So let's actually just grab some roads to start off with. And we're going to come out of here with a nice local quarry style road, I think. So I'll come out at a slight angle to make this a little bit more interesting. And then we'll place in the front of our building right about there. Now I would like roads that kind of wrap around it as well, so we can create some more buildings down the side perhaps too. So I'm actually going to wrap this road around the outside, and we probably want contour lines on for this. And we're going to try and chase it up this sort of peak in the hillside up here, so that we can do another little area with a few industrial buildings halfway up our stone quarry is my idea for that. So let's get in the main building, which I think we'll put just right on this end, and then we've got a nice big kind of area here in which to do a yard, possibly put in some more industrial buildings, that sort of thing, which I think will be a nice touch to it. And then we're just going to place in, for now, a pretty rough shape of what our stone quarry is going to look like. And I want it to be kind of natural, jaggedy edges. We are going to put Anarchy on just to extend it a little bit further outside of the zoned area up here. And we'll go round and completely reshape this once we know how we want it to look. So I think we'll probably go something along those lines. And it just looks so barren when you first put it in. So the first thing I do want to do is do a little bit of landscaping within this, just to create some nice natural quarry layers. So we're going to get a reasonably small brush size. I might go, yeah, 40 for this. And we'll start levelling out some plateaus so that we kind of get this nice little step up. And we want these to be kind of differing in height in different locations. So we're just going to go ahead and do it pretty roughly for the moment until we get a really nice quarry formation. So right now it looks absolutely pants, but we have got some nice dynamic layers inside our quarry, and now we just need to go through and kind of tidy up the actual edges of it. So let's edit the size of the area, and what we're going to do is just really carefully drag it around so that it's nicely positioned around the edges in places that definitely make sense. So let's actually turn off all snapping for this so we get a little bit more fluidity in the movements that we have, and we can just create some nice pretty jagged edges to pull this in around. And I don't kind of mind keeping the fence around the outside. I think what we will do is use Better Bulldozer to delete some of these bits of fencing so it's not so kind of, I mean, why would they put fences at the bottom of the cliffside over here? They'd be digging it out. It doesn't really make much sense. But some of them could stay, some of them are all right. So we just really want to fill like all these tiny little areas at the bases of hills like this. So we've got that nice quarry stone texture filling in these little areas, making sure that we're not kind of spilling too far up the sides. And then like this little back bit, we can come in and kind of pull it all around the outside here. So that is a little bit better and a little bit neater. And now we need to do a whole bunch of decorations around it to make it look a lot more realistic. But what I do really like is kind of using the natural cliff surface as we've got it in and around it. So I think the first thing we do want to do is, yeah, we're going to remove literally all of this fence. So there we go, that looks a lot better already. And I can just see there's a couple of little bits like here where the texture's spilling up the cliff, but I'm not too worried about that. I think we're going to cover up a lot of the edges with a few little decals and things like that. But for the moment, let's get in an extra little building here. So I'd like to find some nice kind of industrial, almost warehouse looking buildings. I'm thinking probably one of the actual warehouse assets themselves, where they've got that nice kind of industrial door on the front. It could be manufacturing. I mean, that building is not too shabby. It looks like it fills the space nicely, so there's not too much kind of fuss around it. So that's a potential option. Oh wow, and our fence has just come back all the way around. That is quite inconvenient. Okay, we'll sort the fence out at the end then. Yeah, I think I'd probably prefer a smaller little warehouse like this. So perhaps we could even team it up actually so that we have two buildings up here. It could be something like that. If we then grab our road, oh actually in fact before we do that, let's just come in here and we're going to redo this area a little bit, and we're going to wrap it round these buildings just so we don't get any kind of issues with them not working or anything like that. We can redo the surface textures so that it looks like they're literally sitting on our kind of open rock. That's not a problem at all because we've got those lovely surface texture packs now, but I think we'll go something like that. And then if we just grab a road here, we could bring this out in front, just like that. And that should hopefully, yes, get rid of our little warnings there. Okay, so we can come back and detail around that in a second once we remove the fence and things like that. And in kind of a good way, I've just realised that this company who's moved into this building here is a company which requires rocks. So that's nice and handy, and they're producing minerals. I'm not sure if we need those, but there we go. Nice and close to our stone quarry. So of course what we want to do now is do a lot of detailing to tidy this all up, and the first thing that I do want to do is actually go into extra detailing tools where we've got our net lanes and add some of these gravel drive lanes into here, because I think this will be a nice touch. I don't know why our trees have just popped back in. Let's just try and remove all of these trees that are hiding underneath our gravel quarry. There we go. Hopefully they won't reappear now. But yeah, if we grab this gravel track lane, what we can do with this is kind of put some kind of makeshift drive lanes in and around our quarry. So we do have to be a little bit careful with this in terms of where we're going, but I've smoothed off a few different places so that I think it's kind of appropriate places where the lorries and trucks and things would drive. And it's pretty frank to see these, but what we do want is really these kind of realistically looping all around the complex in various different formations. And what we can do as well is kind of double them up, layer them up, put in multiple tracks around each other so that they're a little bit brighter. I'll show you in a second what they do look like without all of these white lines in the way. So it's kind of like that. It's just very subtle little scuff marks. So we want to do quite a lot of that all over the place. I can see here where it's gone over very bumpy terrain, it really hasn't shown up at all. So what we can do there is just straighten it out, something like that. Maybe go back over it again just to reinforce that wear over that area. And we're just going to keep doing a whole bunch of these everywhere until we get like a nice sort of worn look. Very subtle indeed, and we'll do a bit more work on that as we go through, but that's the kind of general idea with that. And then there's a few props that we can use to help decorate this up as well. So looking on Google Earth at various different images of quarries, I think it's quite actually surprising how much sort of rubble and that kind of thing is about. It's not super neat like our default quarry area would suggest. So we're going to come in with our little rubble piles, and I'm going to stop snapping upright and just leave on snap to surface, because then with these we can start kind of placing them on some of our little surface areas, and they are going to float a little bit oddly in certain places, so we need to be a little bit careful. But we definitely want piles of rubble pretty similar to what we did in our junkyard as well, so we can place them on top of each other to somewhat pile them up. We find the right places for that where they're not all over the place because of our bumpy terrain. But we can start to put in absolutely tons of these rubble piles all the way around. Yeah, like that one. We don't want anything like that. But we can add these in numerous different places to kind of signify some of that rubble and help pile them up in certain places as well, exactly the same as our little junkyard. And then alongside these piles, we can also put some of our larger and smaller rocks in here. So firstly, the boulders. Let's just go for boulder random. Again, we can add some of these around various different places. And I think in particular on some of these steeper surfaces, it might work pretty well there where they're sort of cutting into it. But we want to go a little bit mad with it, I think, and add an awful lot of them in, because otherwise it's going to look super plain around the places where we don't have them. And even these can look a little bit odd, so we kind of want to blend them into each other so it doesn't look like so many individual rocks and more just a bit of a jaggedy edge that they've not cleanly cut out yet, or that sort of thing. So again, we can use these boulders in with the rubble piles as well, I think. So kind of surrounding the rubble piles would be quite a nice way where they're sort of partly breaking up the stone, partly breaking up the rock. They're in the process of excavating it. I think that'll be quite a nice thing to do. So now that we've done that, we can then also come in with a few extra little surfaces, I think, here. And I'm probably going to resort to using my favourite surface ever, which is the Riverbed Thick Surface by Sully. This is just super versatile for anything like this, and we can add sort of small amounts of this, I think, alongside some of our little rubble piles. Something like that, just to add a little bit of extra dirt to the ground, I think is always a nice effect as well. So we can follow some of our sort of tyre marks around too, create very kind of jaggedy off edges, something like that at least. And if we come away from surfaces, get rid of those dark lines, you can see that just adds a little bit of extra dirt to some of the surfaces we've got going on around. So it's just really adding some small dynamic layers to our quarry, nothing like too heavy or too major, but just some little extra small touches to help with the realism and take away some of the blandness, let's say, of this overall ore surface that we have as the default in this game. So yeah, we'll just go around in a few little places and add a bit more of this in, particularly like I said, around some of the rubble piles and around the edge as well. I think this will help to blend in that stark ore kind of texture into the cliff edge actually at the edge a little bit better, because at the moment that's slightly brown, a bit orangey, that sort of thing, and this will just give it a tiny bit more resemblance to that actual colour, taking away some of that very harsh grey that we have. So around some of the cliff texture edges and our little layers within our quarry, this could probably look pretty good to define those as well, and this will give us a little bit more shape to them when we look from our quarry entrance as well, so that we can actually see some of those layers as opposed to it all just blending into each other. And then finally we can add a couple of little extra details. If we search for mining, we do get our mining excavators, so we can start to place these around as well in various different locations just to add a bit of extra work. It's even smoking away, working away. Brilliant. We'll have it in a few different places where we've got some of that rubble, some of that broken up ground. I think would be a good touch to have. because then they're actually working on those areas where they've broken out the stone but they haven't actually fully excavated it yet. Then we can have some little ore trucks coming in and out, and we could absolutely keep these to the little gravel tracks that we've put in as well. I'll probably come through later and define these a little bit better, adding a few more skid marks all over the actual quarry. But in general, that's kind of the main body of the area done. We've got a lot of detailing still to do around the outside. So we want to remove a lot of this fencing, like I mentioned, create a big yard in here with a few little prop details. I want to keep it quite open actually. And I think also bring in a little bit of undergrowth. So we're going to use the trick that I mentioned in the previous episode with the wild green bushes. If we use these, we can take the large one and we just sink these into the ground just a few meters, like even just 2 meters. In fact, let's go 2.5 meters. That seems to be quite a good height. We can then just sink these. We can add in a few of these round in different areas where maybe it's less used, it's a little bit more overgrown. I think particularly in around some of these rocks where they've kind of broken it up and they're a little bit slow to move some of them. Be quite a nice touch to add a little bit of greenery to it. So yeah, these work super well for just a little bit of overgrowth, a little bit more muddying and dirtying. And of course we do also have decals as well, let's not forget. So which if we go for some big ones could add quite a nice touch around some of our rocky areas just to sort of muddy those up a little bit. We'll definitely have a lot of stains going into our yard area, which I think would be appropriate. But we could also kind of lay them over some of our little track areas as well, which help to define those along with the gravel track, make them a little bit more prominent in terms of where the vehicles are actually driving around the quarry. That potentially could look pretty good, but there's a whole ton of things we could do. But I think that's generally the shape of what I wanted for this. So I think now let's just come in and finish off this little yard out here, add in a little bit more forest around it as well, which I think would be a nice touch, and just finish off this area before we move on to schools. Right, so there we have our ore quarry. Nicely finished, I think. There's maybe some little dodgy patches that I might tidy up a little bit later on, but yeah, nice big yard out the front, colossal ore signs, of course, little extra security gates on the end of this road here, and then into our big old ore quarry, which I quite like the look of. It's a different way to do it, at least, and maybe there's a few too many boulder areas. Perhaps we only want 1 or 2 areas where they're kind of live excavating, but I quite like how this sort of looks, a little bit rough and ready, so I'm kind of pleased with how it's come out, and particularly all the different layers, like scooping down into the bits that they're excavating, being different heights and kind of slopey bits coming up for the trucks to drive round. Yeah, pretty pleased with how that sits in. So a quick note on budget as well, we're actually making 11,000 an hour now, so that has actually shot up from having our ore production in, interestingly. Taxation, we're still on 12% for absolutely everything. I'm not inclined to lower it for commercial office to pull in demand because we've got empty commercial and office buildings, so I'm kind of like happy with that. I don't think we really necessarily need it. Production wise, we're obviously making a really nice surplus on stone right now. And interestingly, vegetables has actually gone down to 0, so I still think there's maybe some little buggy things going on in this game because that doesn't seem quite right when that was like 3 tons or something when we started the game. I don't think having stone would mean that we don't want vegetables, so I'm not really entirely sure how that's working. Interestingly, in terms of material goods, we're making absolutely plenty. We've got a huge surplus on most things apart from like the odd few things here. So actually, interestingly, most of it is food. So I do think we probably need to come in and put in some farming at some point to reduce the deficit on those products. And then, of course, we've got electronics. We don't have very many offices in yet, so that doesn't really surprise me there. But nicely balanced, at least on stone. We're using a good ton of it, so that's not too bad. Not too bad at all. And for some reason, we're then making more money from it as well, so that is wonderful. Now yeah, on education, we're still on 50% budget. I'm actually going to raise this up just a little bit. We're going to go up to 70%. I'm kind of going to slowly, incrementally increase it and see how that affects the budget. We're now building up a nice load of extra money as well. Of course, we're going to need quite a bit to put in trains because we'll need the rail yard, also the station, putting in tracks, etc, etc. That's a big budget job. But let's just trim back our rail line for now, because what I would like to do, if we take a look at the education panel, you can see here, most of our citizens are either uneducated or poorly educated, so we need to improve this a little bit, I think, and get a bit more balance towards the higher educations. Now, we obviously don't have the money to start putting in a college and a university right now, but we're going to start off with a high school because we don't yet have one. Interestingly, it says that our capacity for elementary school is down. However, if we go to this elementary school, we've only got 397 out of 1,000 people in it. The efficiency isn't great because of our service budget being down, but I'm kind of content with that for now. We've only got a 2% dropout rate, so it's not too bad in that sense, I don't think. But I think a high school would certainly help with the education, so we'll start getting people through high school and on to further education at least. So we are going to go for the small high school. It actually costs half as much as the main one. The capacity is half as much as well, but the capacity being 400. Our education panel here tells me there's 600 eligible, but we know that not all the eligible people are actually going to go. So I think that this will give us enough capacity for now. And I'd like to place it, I think, in the middle of this neighbourhood here. We're obviously going to have the rail line coming out into the rail yard over this side. So I feel like this is a reasonably nice out-of-town neighbourhood to put it in. And I think we're going to come in with a little bit more lower wealth housing on the outskirts of the city over here, maybe a little bit later on. So this should suit for this area pretty nicely, I think. So let's go ahead and get in a road for it, because I'd like it to have a little bit of breathing room, let's say, around it. Probably a few little car parks as well. So I think we'll bring that in alongside there, and I think we will actually just go straight into that section of the grid that side. And then I do just want to make sure we can continue this grid on out this way. So let's have that. Yeah, that's coming out a nice 180. And we'll also place in that section of the grid there too. And then we'll come on to our high school. So yeah, this small high school is really quite nice and cozy actually. So I think what we're going to do is place it right at this side and then see what we can do with a few little car parking lots over here. We could even do a little bit of custom car parking, but I don't think potentially it's actually needed here. I think what would be nice is a couple of these longer car parks. So let's just place those in, then we're going to grab move it, and we're going to move these right up to the edges. In fact, I might leave a small border here where we could put in a few hedges. But then can we fit in this other one quite nicely next to it? We can. Let's just move those a tiny bit further back. There we go. So we get rid of the kind of overspill over this side. And then we can come in with our net lanes. Let's grab our hedge higher. I think that would be appropriate. Just draw in a couple of little border divider hedges like this. Definitely one all the way along this side. And I think what we could probably do is connect in a path to the back of the car park here. Might be quite a nice little touch. So yeah, let's go and find our pathway, and we'll just sort of loop it in like that, which has done something really dodgy to our car park. Can we remove that? Yes, let's definitely remove that. I'm not sure what's going on here, why those are being deleted. If we just use move it a tiny bit here, then maybe perhaps a little bit too overlapped. Okay, that's brought it back. Perhaps we could try and use the invisible pedestrian path just to connect it in. Let's turn off snapping for this. And that'll connect in there. We've still got our car park, I can see. And then we can come in with a little surface. Make sure we've got our networks on here, yeah, and then we can come in with a little surface to meet up with the car park here and just highlight where that actual alleyway path is. So yeah, something along those lines. A little bit of decoration needed around that. Now in terms of the upgrades on this, we still have the massive sports pitch, but I don't think we're going to put this in this neighbourhood. I feel like that's slight overkill. We have a few extra classrooms which we could potentially always put down here later on as well if we wanted to. That could be pretty nice to have them just across the road in the campus. But for now we're going to leave that. And I think what we will do is actually come into parks. We have unlocked all of our big parks. And perhaps add in a little football stadium. So I'm thinking probably on the side here because yeah, if we have a look at the extensions, we can add more than one of these. I think we can add as many as we want, in fact. So we could kind of place those nicely around there and have enough space to do that side. Then we could have the football field over here. I'm quite inclined to do. I think that's like a nice addition on the side there. We've got the actual grandstands are looking out over the school campus, which I think would be pretty cute there. So then we can kind of leave this block blank to fill in more space for our school when we actually need it. So let's just loop this road around the outside. Hopefully that terrain won't be too dodgy there. And that'll kind of mark the area for our school. I think we do want to do a bit of decoration out the front and then we can put extra classrooms and things out the back. I think it would probably be the best thing here. So yeah, we'll come back and do a spot of detailing on that a little bit later on. But right next to it, I do think in order to get our population up a little bit, let's just actually check unemployment. We're at 27%. So it still is pretty high. We do have a little bit of demand for some more industry, but we've got most of our demand for people. So I think I am going to go ahead and just add in a few more little houses. And what would be quite nice over here is to have a bit of a low income development, I think. So this road could definitely connect in there to give some access through into this little development. And then we're going to go ahead and lay down a bit of a road layout for this. So let's bring that out to there and we'll join this straight up into that intersection. Now a lot of this is going to be low income and zoned, but what I do want is quite a lot of space between the buildings and between the assets. So we're getting some nice open green areas and that sort of thing. So I think one potentially on the corner out there like that might be quite nice. We're going to have to do a little bit of zone control here. With some of these areas, so things like paths are going to really help with that. Let's add a path into that intersection there, that's not too bad. And then let's come in and we'll get our low rent housing zone and start to see what we get. Now I did realise on here, if I go for no theme, that is how we get our low rent, because I was struggling actually to find it. We didn't find it. And of course the low rent houses are the same for the EU and for the North American theme, so that is why I was struggling. So if you have the same issue, try that, turn on no theme, high density, and then you'll get them. So from this now, we can be a bit more selective about the assets that we're using. And I quite like some pretty big sort of tower blocks, I think. Just a couple of them in here, I think would go pretty nicely. So we have got this asset, which comes in a few different variations. with various different car parks around them as well, which I think could look pretty good. I'm actually going to, yeah, we're going to remove our zone there, hopefully before anyone moves in so we don't get the bit of the bug. Let's completely demolish that. And then we can come in and add in a few more of these. So I'm thinking of something sort of along this line. So we're using the same asset repeated over and over. It's almost a little bit like a British kind of council estate is what I'm thinking with this. Anyone from the UK may understand what I mean. Then perhaps just for a bit of variation, we have one slightly different asset just on this side over here. So you do quite often find this actually in the UK, where you get these kind of estates right on the edge of some like low density housing like this. And they're all kind of fenced in, they've got some recreation around them, a little bit of green space, lots of parking, that sort of thing. So that is very much what we're trying to accomplish here, and hopefully that's sort of coming through for anyone who is familiar with those type of areas. Now here we do have a fire escape on the back. I'm wondering how close we could actually go with that asset. Feels like that's maybe a bit overkill, so yeah, let's put in this one. I'd really like to get it facing this road. There we go. That's exactly what we wanted there. So yeah, let's place that in there. I think that gives us a pretty nice formation, particularly overlooking the football pitch here. I'm quite enjoying that. And we just want to come in and do a whole bunch of detailing around it. Now we're probably getting too many of the low income housing, but there seems to be demand for high density, so I'm hoping this helps. They are actually already pretty much filling up, so that's good news there. And I think with the high school here as well, hopefully that will help, because I know that students tend to want high density residentials like this, so hopefully that will kind of coincide nicely with each other. And we can do things like add a little bit more parking into here. Let's also come in and think about parks. So actually we're almost running out of money, interestingly, with this. I'd really like to get a skate park in here. It's actually an incredibly large asset, which I hadn't necessarily accounted for. Perhaps we could actually do that opposite the football field. Yeah, I think let's come in and put the skate park over this side. We could do our own little makeshift prop skate park if we wanted to over here. Of course, we could do other things like a basketball court, for example, as well. I think we're going to come in and create our own little custom park in here instead. So we'll keep the skate park like that, and then we'll create our own custom park centred around a basketball court with maybe some high fences, a few little stains, a little bit more rundown, maybe some graffiti, that sort of thing, to really shape out this neighbourhood. So now we have our gritty little low-income housing estate in, and I've had a lot of fun with this. Obviously we've used a ton of decals to kind of dirty up some of the buildings, like they're not kept as well as other buildings around the city so far. Lots of the wonderful graffiti assets from Sully as well, so in particular you can see that over here on the basketball court, just on the floor around this little kiosk. All been sprayed over with some boxes and trash and things just sat behind it. Really loving this. Really loving this. I actually quite like how the basketball court slightly raises up here too, just kind of completing the imperfections of the area, shall we say. And these cracks as well really help to make this, and a few little benches around. I feel like that's a nice community area. And then obviously around all the buildings as well, we've used a ton of stains, added in our extra little car parks, bits of hedging and fencing here, but I've tried to keep a lot of it sort of just open green, like this little corner here, for example. A few trees kind of dotted around in certain places, but much of it just sort of open grass and very open to the road as well, like you'd just walk straight into the estate. Really love this little bit around here too, where we've used all of the content creator posters available to us. You can see our little Solitude poster right in the middle there. Absolutely love those. Big shout out to City Rat for those. But yeah, I think it's come together pretty well. We've done a touch of fencing in various different places, a few little bush lines and tree lines and things, but I'm loving the overall vibe of it, and I'm particularly liking actually this kind of level of height that it gives. Particularly with the industry right here. We've obviously got the high school, which we've left very bare for now. I'm leaving this space open to expansion further down the line. So we'll come back and detail this up and fill this up with potentially more classrooms as and when we need them. We do have a homeless issue. I know there's bugs at the moment about this, but instantly they have moved into our little football field over here, as you can see. So we might have to take a little look at that next time. Same with our skate park as well. They've moved in here, but I'm liking that other corner next to the football pitch. I really love how these kind of overlook it as well. I'm very much enjoying that dynamic. I wonder what these people are doing actually. I wish they'd actually play football and not just stand around in the parks, but there we have it. Outside the front of the school, I didn't really do too much here, just left this as an open green space with a pathway coming through, added in a zebra crossing here as well for pedestrians, just for ease of access out of this little suburb and into the school. We definitely want to come in and add in some bus networks, I think, around here, so I'm wondering if we do invest some of our money in that before we put in the trains. But that being said, I'd really like to get the rail yard in over here so we can continue the development on round this corner and get this bridge in over to this side as well. Keep on heading towards that downtown area. But we also have a lot of space still over here to develop. I'm thinking probably a little beachside neighbourhood would be nice this side. Nice bit of beach detailing around here. And I'm thinking as well we'll put in some larger mansions around this peninsula. So let me know in the comments below what you would actually like to see develop next. Do you want rail? Do you want buses? Do you want beachside neighbourhood? Something else? Let me know in the comments below. But yeah, this will be it for this episode. So we have got our stone quarry in, our low income housing and a high school. Not too much today, pretty detail heavy. But if we just take a little look at the city as well, we're already back up to 235,000 here, making 9,000 an hour. Great news. We've gone up about 1,500 citizens as well, just from adding in those few little low income houses. I am seeing more of these police warnings popping up though, so like I said earlier in the episode, I think it is now time to go into services. We've already raised education a bit, but let's come into police, and we're going to pop this up to, I think we'll go to 70% as well. We'll keep adding to it incrementally as we go along, because in terms of happiness, they're not really complaining about police actually. They're only complaining of unreliable mail service. Well, there's no mail service, so that would be why. High taxes and unreliable internet. So we do want to come onto communications eventually, but I kind of want to build up the budget first. They're still pretty happy, so I'm kind of content with that. And then just quickly on our production chains as well, obviously still making that lovely surplus on stone. Vegetables have popped back up again. So I don't know what was happening there previously with zero need for it, but we have now got a deficit there, so definitely farmland coming soon. I'm not really inclined to change the taxes at the moment. They do say it's high tax, but we're doing all right from a money perspective, and any eagle-eyed viewers will see I have finally actually named our city. I'm sorry about that. It took me 2 episodes to actually call it Fewladelphia, but there we go. We've got it in. So for today, that is going to be it. If you have enjoyed the episode, likes, comments and shares are really greatly appreciated. And while you wait for new content, check out one of the videos on screen. But that's all from me for now. So thank you so much for tuning in. catch you again next time. Bye bye!